guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to do something fun. We're going to power rank my epic champions, the epic champions that I have on my account that I have maxed out and played in a variety of different areas in the game. And we're going to talk about, who I use the most, who I like the most, where I use these champions, and how I built these champions out. And I want to hear from you guys, what epic champions, if you had to maybe power rank your top 3 in the comments below, I think it'd be kind of fun to scroll through the comments and see who uses which champions the most. And obviously it depends on what other champions you have. That's going to be a quick disclaimer before we jump into this top 10 list, is I'm going to rank them based on, there'll be some obvious kind of snubs here because I have better options at a different area. Maybe I have a legendary champion who does the job better. A good example of that is going to be Skullcrusher, who will be on my list, but I also have Valkyrie, so I don't really rank him super high as if he was the only counterattack champion on my team. Again, I will point those out when we kind of get to those champions on the list. So without further ado, let's jump in at number 10. The number 10 is going to be Fennecil, a champion that we haven't really talked about a ton here on the channel. I did do a guide on him in the early days of YouTube when I really had no clue what I was doing about a year ago now. But either way, I think he's a really solid champion. And the reason I have him on my top 10 list is I actually really like this champion. I think he's a great support champion in the game for Epic. And also I use him a lot, or I rely on him a lot, I should say, in Faction Wars, right? So he carries my faction team in High Elves in terms of that support role that we're looking for. He was one of the champions that made it possible for me to clear level 21 of High Elf Faction Wars. I have him in a Frenzy set just because sometimes I'll do this, right? A champion that I only use in one area of the game, well, I'll go ahead and use or put on like kind of an awkward set that's not one of the best sets in the game. In this case, it was Frenzy, just so I can take advantage of this gear that I kind of farmed that's still really good gear. And that's what I did with Fennecil. However, you can build him with a bunch of HP. He's a great champion to build with a lot of HP because his heal on Oakskinned increased defense on all allies 2 turns and then heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP. A great candidate for a, you get it, shield set, right? Put him in a shield set, you'll have a great shield for 3 turns throughout every round of the dungeon or faction wars or whatever, and you'll also be getting extra heal out of this Oakskinned ability. Oakskinned is a great support ability, one of the better in the game on a 3-turn cooldown with increased defense on 2 turns on all allies, okay? Plus the heal in there as well. His Wither attacks all enemies, decrease the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn, not bad, and then Spring Lullaby on his A1 has a small, well, not even that small, it's what, a 40% chance or so, 10, 20, 35, 40%, 50% chance, excuse me, of sleep debuff on the A1. So that's kind of a whatever, but overall, I really like Fennecil. I love this champion. In terms of masteries, I have War Master on this champion, and then I went down the support tree as well. Moving on to number 9. So I mentioned him earlier, guys. Number 9 is going to be Skullcrusher. Skullcrusher, obviously a champion who I still rely on in the Ogryn faction crypts, but that's really about it on this champion. I have him in a Vamp set here because why not? He's a solid champion to put a Vamp set on because of his Ally Protect. And yeah, I mean, I don't have the best gear on him. This is kind of a secondary champion who I only use, again, in faction wars. But of course, he has the counterattack and the unkillable on himself for 1 turn on the Stonewall ability, plus the Ally Protect, and then he has decretion of all debuffs on this champion by 1 turn. In terms of masteries on this champion, I have War Master, and I have Retribution, and I have Deterrence also on the defensive tree on Skullcrusher. So Skullcrusher really is there. Again, I have crit, what do I have? HP, excuse me, percentage on the gauntlets. I have defense on the chest, and I have speed on the boots on this champion. And really, it's about keeping him alive pretty much. I'm not expecting a lot of damage out of this champion because when you talk about faction wars in this game, it doesn't really matter, you know, to a certain extent, depending on your strategy, how much damage you're putting out. It's all about staying alive. If it takes you 10 minutes, it takes you 10 minutes as long as you can get the job done. So I'm not that worried about building my faction wars only champions out with 100% crit rate, even on the support champions. So that is Skullcrusher, a champion who I really love, just don't use him as much because I do have Valkyrie as well when I need that counterattack in other areas such as Clan Boss inside the game. Let's move on to number 8. Coming in at number 8, it's Grizzled Jarl. I really love this champion. As you guys can tell, I love defense-based and support champions, and Grizzled Jarl, is a really, really solid one. In terms of his skills, he has an A1 that has a heal reduction for 2 turns. His damage is based off of defense, another reason to love this champion. And then he has the Ancestral Shield ability. When booked, you really have to book this champion up. 3-turn cooldown on an increased defense for 2 turns, and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn. Again, this champion is a guy who I use mainly in Faction Wars, but you could also use him in Ice Golem as kind of a support, increased defense-based champion. You could also pair him with other champions, say even in the arena on a defensive team or an attack team on kind of a defensive build. Nice to have the block buffs, nice to have that increased defense buff if you have a bunch of other champions such as Soul of the Drakes, such as Raz and Scarhide, who are doing damage based off of defense, going to increase their damage output while giving them extra survivability. So on the A3, Earth Stomp attacks all enemies, 75% chance of, or 100% chance when booked, of placing a decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and decreases each target's HP by 30% of the damage inflicted. Again, this is based off of defense. So really solid champion. Again, I have War Master, I have Lasting Gifts for the increased defense, and I have Master Hexer on this champion as well. So a really solid champion. He has the heal reduction, the decreased attack, and the increased defense block debuffs. Kind of a lot in one, a dwarf package here. I'm building him with a lot of speed. I like speed on this champion. He has a pretty low base speed at 95, but I went with speed boots. I have defense on the chest, and I have crit rate. I do have him up to over 105% on the crit rate, so he's putting out a little bit of damage as well. You also want accuracy on this champion. Other than that, just stacking up his defense as much as we can. Again, we don't have the best gear on our account on this champion, but really prioritizing defense, crit rate, and accuracy is going to work out just fine for you on Grizzled Jarl. Let's move on to champion number 7. That's right, it's Mausoleum Mage, a fantastic champion. Now, I have him built in kind of an arena build right now with Unshakable, giving them extra resist for the arena. However, if you want any offense out of this champion, or any damage, I should say, out of this support champion, go with the War Master. That's where most of his damage will be coming from, as he only has 1 damage-dealing ability. Also, Lasting Gifts definitely works on this champion. As we talked about with so many of the other champions so far, he has a block debuffs and increased defense on 1 ability on a 3-turn cooldown. Also has an increased crit rate compared to Grizzled Jarl, who doesn't have that, I guess, but increased crit rate is kind of a, you kind of have to build a team around this champion if you want to take advantage of that, and hey, a lot of people do. His Winds of Purging, compared again to the Earth Stomp ability of Grizzled Jarl, is more defensive, right? We're not doing any damage here, certainly not any damage based on defense. Instead, we are cleansing all of our allies, removing all debuffs, and then healing them a chance to further heal based on the amount of debuffs that are removed from those allies. Now, this heal is based on 10% of this champion's max HP, so again, it makes him a very viable candidate for a shield set. Highly advised that you put a shield set on this champion. We did a tandem champion review here a week or 2 ago on Bellower and Soul of the Drakes used together on the same team. We're going to have another one coming up, a little bit less free-to-play friendly, though, with Mausoleum Mage and Seer on the same team, and having him in a shield set is going to help you out in that tandem as well. Talk more about that on that video, but either way, building him out with HP makes a lot of sense because it scales better at 19k versus a 947 base defense. So a little bit more scalability. For that reason, I have an HP chest on him. I have speed boots, and I actually have a defense gauntlets on this champion. So, you can go with HP as well instead. That'd be just fine as well. So that's Mausoleum Mage. I use him in Faction Wars, and I use him in a variety of dungeons paired again with Seer. Hey, coming in at number 6, speak of the devil, it is Seer herself, guys. Seer is a great champion, really a big fan of her, but she's kind of like a nuclear weapon, where you gotta be careful, because if you drop her before you get to the warhead, she's going to kill your team as well, because you're stripping off all of your buffs. That's another reason why we love having her with Mausoleum Mage in the shield set, right? An extra buff to strip away. Karma Burn ability is all you really need to talk about when you talk about Seer. Actually, let's start with Clan Banner real quickly, though. She is putting a increased crit rate buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then she has a weaken on all enemies for 2 turns. So the weaken is nice to have on an AoE, and then she has the Karma Burn removes all buffs from all allies and all enemies, and then attacks. The damage is based on the number of buffs removed. So she can deal 300, 400,000 damage. It's insane in dungeons, making for very, very fast runs. However, again, it is dangerous with Seer because she will remove all of your buffs, your increased speed, your increased defense, whatever you have, it's all going to be gone as soon as she goes with the Karma Burn ability. So again, you're playing with fire when you're playing with Seer, but she's a really solid champion. I went with Flawless Execution because I'm building her with a lot of crit damage. It's all about crit damage. It's all about dealing a ton of damage. Some people go with Helm Smasher. I found that she does a little bit more with Flawless Execution and a Savage gear set, rather than just going with Savage and Helm Smasher, which would be intuitively what I would have thought, but I have found in my experience she does a little bit more damage this way. Lasting Gifts and for the crit rate, I guess, and Master Hexer for the weaken on this champion. In terms of artifacts, I already mentioned it. I have a Savage set, ignores 25% of enemy defense on every hit. Thank you very much. And then if I had it, I would go with like a Cruel set on top of that. I just went with a Broken Frenzy with crit damage. I have attack percentage on the chest, and again I have Savage gear everywhere else with speed boots, and then I have attack banner, attack ring, and crit damage on the amulet on my Seer, and she is an absolute just goddess of nukes, is Seer. Let's move on to number 5. So coming in at number 5 is Maneater. We have 2 Maneaters because we do have an unkillable Maneater team for Clan Boss. And I think that Maneater, on top of the value that I get from him in Clan Boss, which is, you know, essential to my Clan Boss strategy, he's also a great, great champion. You just look at his kit and you're reminded, kind of like a champion like Seeker, who's actually not on my list, but, you know, he could be in the future if I kind of rebuild him for Clan Boss. But Maneater, it's funny little tangent here, side note, is I put out a Seeker guide, God, a long time ago, and I mentioned that he's actually low-key good in Clan Boss. And man, people tore me apart in the comments saying that, dude, are you crazy? Just really, really disagreeing. And now, not saying I called it, but months later, heck, maybe like 9 months later, you know, he is considered to be one of the top-tier Clan Boss champions out there, especially for an epic. Anyway, guys, back to Maneater. This champion receives damage, a very negligible amount of damage, and then places an unkillable and a block debuff buff on all allies for 2 turns, and that is the Ancient Blood ability. But Siphon is also very good. Attacks one enemy, fully depletes the target's turn meter, fills this champion's turn meter equal to the amount the target loses. What a great ability on a 3-turn cooldown, man. Siphon is one of the stronger epic attacks in the game, especially against bosses. You know, Ice Golem, Fire Knight just steal their entire turn meter. Not only deplete it, but steal it too. So, you know, chances are he'll get to go again really quickly, certainly lapping the boss or whoever enemy he's stealing turn meter from. Obviously not that invaluable against Clan Boss, but in dungeons it makes him really great. And on his A1 it's great as well. Attack one enemy, places a strong version of decreased attack debuff on all enemies if the attack is critical. So it's an AoE decrease attack on his A1, a full turn meter steal on his A2, and unkillable and block debuffs on his A3. Man, Maneater is really, really great, and he has a decent aura, ally HP in dungeons by 33%. That's Maneater. In terms of masteries, War Master, and again, Sniper and Master Hexer on this champion. Coming in at number 4 is Stag Knight. Just kind of a note on Maneater. I didn't show you his equipment because I have him speed tuned for unkillable, so it's kind of a hodgepodge of gear that I got to add up to 248 or whatever the heck it is, okay? So Stag Knight, but you know, when building out that champion, just go for where you're going to be using him. Stag Knight, I have in a shield set. Again, I love putting my debuffers in shield sets if I can get away with it, giving them added utility to the team that they are on, and it will help a lot of you guys with progression if you consider the same. Stag Knight I used in like 3 or 4 locations for a long time until I pulled Dracomorph. But even with Dracomorph, I still use Stag Knight as my debuffer in Fire Knight. I find that he gets the job done a little bit better because of the affinity matchup in level 20, despite not having the weaken debuff. However, Hunt Master has everything you need in it. Decreased defense and a decreased attack for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. You guys know Stag Knight by now. I'm sure if you have him, you likely use him at least in one area, maybe in a ton of areas in the game. A lot of people run him as a debuffer, even in Arena as well. And then he has Lead the Pack, which gives accuracy each time an ally has a debuff resisted by an enemy. Not a bad passive to have there. And then he has a decreased speed on his A1. In terms of masteries for this champion, again, went with War Master. We also went with Sniper, getting his, because it's a 95% chance of landing the decreased attack and the decreased defense. You can get up to 100 with the Sniper mastery, and Master Hexer, of course, to extend the duration, hopefully, of those 2 debuffs. That is Stag Knight. Again, shield set. I have him built with a lot of speed. Over 200 speed is great on this champion. I actually have him built out to do some decent damage for me as well in level 20 dungeons, depending on the team that I have him with. He's good for about 500 to 700,000 damage, if that gives you any perspective. I do have an attack chest on him. However, you could easily put an HP chest on him instead if you have a shield set, or you could put a defense chest on him as well. His defense and his HP both scales really well, especially his HP high for an epic champion at almost 21k. And then again, speed on the boots. I really love Stag Knight. Really great champion. I have crit damage on the amulet, accuracy on the banner, and I have HP on the ring. Again, if you don't want to do HP, go with defense, especially if you don't have a shield set, but prioritize speed either way. Alright guys, so we're getting into the top 3. Coming in at number 3 is Miscreated Monster. Some people might say this is actually a snub because he's a beast, man. I use Miscreated Monster in Spiders. I used him in Ice Golem as well. Those are the 2 areas I currently use him in the game. In Spiders, he's the best support in the game. Certainly in the conversation of best support in the game, because his damage based, or his shield, excuse me, is based off the damage that he's putting out on this insane ability, Lightning Storm, on a 3-turn cooldown. He's dealing a decent amount of damage. He's stunning the opponents, a 50% chance of a stun, and then he's putting an amazing shield on all of your allies. He can keep your squishier damage-dealing champions, your AoE damage-dealing champions, alive throughout a Spiders run, and he's really good against the boss, the Ice Golem boss in Ice Golem's peak, because, again, the Ice Golem can have a tendency, especially if you have a lot of damage dealers on your team, of dealing a tremendous amount of damage in quick succession, and you'll have his shield up on all your allies to help mitigate that damage. So it's alive, ally protect, spooky groan. He has the fear every time someone is attacked while under the ally protect, and then he has a stun and a chance of placing a decreased defense on his A1. All of his damage is based off of HP. Heck, you can put him in a shield set if you want to, because it stacks with a shield ability. However, with me, I'm just go ahead and stacking him with life, immortal, accuracy gear, whatever you have to give him more HP, because his damage again is based off of HP. So for that reason, we're going with the HP chest. We're going with crit rate. We want him to be 100% crit rate on the gauntlets. We're going with speed on the boots, and then we're going with HP, crit damage, and HP if you can get away with it on the banner. Otherwise, go ahead and put him with the accuracy if you can't get the accuracy from other gear. I have him in an accuracy set because one of my goals on Miscreated Monster is getting that accuracy up over 200 without having to use an accuracy banner. That way I can stack it with even more HP, and heck, 5,200 on a 5-star banner is a lot of HP to add to his kit. That's going to help out his damage and help out the shield as well. In terms of mastery, we have Fearsome Presence, increasing the chance of landing that stun by 5% to 55%. That's going to work on his A1 and his A2. And then we have Lasting Gifts, again, 30% chance to extend the duration of his buffs, and Master Hexer as well to extend the duration of his stuns. So, excuse me, not his stuns, his decreased defense on his A1 and his, does it work with fear? I don't think it does, right? Does not work with fear. Okay, so just his decreased defense, I guess that's a decent enough option for Miscreated Monster. Let's go into the top 2. So coming in at number 2 is arguably the strongest champion in the game for an epic, but some might argue even on the same tier as the top tier legendaries in the game. It's Madameceres, who will be getting a nerf. Now the rumor out there, I believe from Manable Gaming, is this is not confirmed. She's getting a very, very, very small nerf on her A3 Midnight Ritual. This will be, according to him, this will be reduced to 2 turns instead of 3 turns on the duration of her debuffs. If that's the only nerf she's getting, I am a very happy man, because I don't think that's really negligible. She's still amazing in the arena, and that's where most people use her in the end game. However, it will affect her versatility or her utility a little bit in the mid game, this not lasting for 3 turns if that's the case. Either way, even if it is only 2 turns, it's still the best ability, the best epic ability in the game, or really close to, alongside Miscreated Monster and maybe our candidate for number 1. It's an insane ability. A lot of legendaries would kill for this ability in their kit. Removes all buffs from all enemies. So the removal of all buffs alone is great. And then the strong version of decreased attack, the strong version of decreased defense on all enemies for 3 turns is insane. My favorite arena champion. Trick or Treat steals all the buffs of the or has a 50% chance, of stealing 1 random buff from each target on the enemy team, and then plays a block debuffs for all allies on all allies for 2 turns if any buff is stolen, and then places a true fear debuff for 1 turn on enemies who have buffs stolen. Man, that's a great ability as well. And then Panic has a fear debuff, and then the chance of landing does increase based on the number of debuffs the enemy is on. All that while still placing a shield buff on this champion for 10% of their max HP at the start of every turn. When attacked while under the shield, has a 35% chance of placing a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. Man, her kit is a mouthful because it's so good. Now, I have her in arena build right now. I have the Eagle Eye Mastery on her. We'll notice when we get to our artifacts as to why, but we do have lasting gifts. We do it for the block debuffs. We have Master Hexer as well. So definitely a very solid champion. We also have Cycle of Vengeance on our Madameceres. Really, we're building her right now just for the arena. That's where I only use her in the game, but she's very important to my account. She's an essential part of my arena, my main arena team. She's on my main arena team. She's the only epic on the team with a trio of legendaries. So I have her in an immunity set. Having her immune from freeze, from hegemons out there is really important to me. That way she can always strip the opponent's team of all of their buffs. And I have her accuracy very high at 500 and, well, I have 521 on the accuracy and 211 on the speed with the immunity set. It gets the job done more often than not. Over 500 accuracy. Seldom do I run into a resist team with over 521 on the resist. So for those reasons, I have as much speed as I can stack on her as any other debuffer in the game. We want her to be going first. After my speed booster, after my arbiter, we'll have Madameceres going second on the team, or third on the team. I think she goes third on my team, behind my provoker, who right now is Molly Tankard. So that's my Madameceres, guys. I just love this champion. She is so good. If you don't want to build her with that high accuracy, for that reason I have an accuracy chest on her as well, then no worries. Just go with a defensive build on this champion, or a high resist build if you don't have immunity gear as well. You have some options and some flexibility, but mainly it's all about speed when we talk about Madameceres. And coming in at number 1 is Royal Guard. So Royal Guard, you know, I mentioned this before, I don't hear his name as a lot of people saying is the best epic in the game. Usually they're saying, you know, that about, I don't know, Madameceres or Miscreated Monster or Sepulchral Sentinel, who I don't have, or Stag Knight or Mausoleum Mage or any of those champions. Royal Guard, you know, his name's in the conversation a lot of the times, but I just think I cannot deny the impact that he has had on my account over any other epic champion. I use him on almost every dungeon. He is my main damage dealer. First of all, when we talk about his kit here, he has the aura 35% attack in dungeons, makes him a dungeon lead on most of my teams. On top of that, we went with Flawless Execution. Stacking up the crit damage is how you want to build up a champion who is doing damage based on enemy max HP. You could also, you know, put him in Savage gear if you wanted to on top of that, but primarily we're focusing on crit damage and ignore defense on enemy max HP champions, and that's what he has on his takedown ability. Attacks all enemies, damage increases according to enemy max HP. It's really good for attacking not just bosses, but bosses plus their minions. Unlike Coulthard, he's going to be dealing that damage to all of them, so against Ice Golem, for example. So I use him in Dragon's Lair, I use him in Ice Golems, I use him in all of the potion keeps, I use him obviously in Faction Wars as well as my main damage dealer. I just use him pretty much everywhere except for the arena. A really good champion in Fire Knight. I use him in Spider, of course, as well. So I can't deny how much I use this champion because of how much damage he deals out on the takedown ability. We're talking, 1.4, 1.5 million or higher per attack against bosses. 4 times at random on his A3 hamstring ability. It hits decently hard and has a decreased speed debuff, the strong version, so not bad at all. Also has a chance of decreasing turn meter, so it's a great ability to kind of complement the rest of his kit on the hamstring. And then Razor Blade has a strong version of decreased defense for 2 turns as well. Great for, say, a spider run where you put it on manual and try to land that decreased defense with your Royal Guard rather than having to have that decreased defense on your team, which would be ideal for manual runs. So guys, that is my list of top 10 epic champions on my account. I have a lot of great champions who I didn't talk about. Sandlash Survivor, Vrask are great champion. Tyrell is another great champion, but the thing is I have Dracomorph. So Tyrell was in an awkward spot where he has the Singing Steel ability, but it's a two turns debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown. A great champion, damage based on defense. Don't get me wrong, he is in a vacuum a top 10 champion, certainly out of my epics, but in terms of how much I use him, it's just not, I don't use him, because I have Dracomorph for magic affinity, and I have Stag Knight, who has it on a 3-turn instead, right? I talked about Seeker. I love this champion. Allure would be a great champion to mention in this video because of her A1, but I don't use her anymore in Fire Knight. I run 2 Cold Hearts instead, and that's all I need for the turn meter on that team. Other champions, a lot of these champions are great. Husk deals a decent amount, a lot of damage with the stun on his Despair ability on a 3-turn or 4-turn cooldown, excuse me. And then just a lot of solid champions. Zargala, another great champion. I just don't use her a lot. Sometimes I'll use her in Dragons, but again, since I got Dracomorph, I really don't use her anywhere anymore except for faction crypts, but certainly deserves a mention in today's video, as does Rearguard Sergeant, as does, well, not so much the new champions, but Cardinal, another great champion. Basher, I love, and also Umbral Enchantress, 2 kind of control champions that I don't use right now, but I could very well build a team around them for Tag Team Arena. Both Basher and Umbral Enchantress I look at as mainly, for where I am in the game, as arena champions, and they're both great at that. So those are some honorable mentions. Skullcrown as well, obviously a great AoE damage dealer. I just have better options in my legendaries. Speaking of legendaries, guys, do you want me to do the same thing, kind of power ranking my legendary champions in the game, talk about who I like the most and, the least, I guess, in a future video? Same thing with rares, guys. Let me know if you want me to do that. Thank you so much for watching until the end of the video. I appreciate all of you guys, and as always, take care, guys.